The purpose of today's lecture is to provide some background information on the subject of financial accounting research. The outline that you see on the screen is also available on Sakai as a Word document. We're going to cover the history of U.S. GAAP, how the codification is organized, process for changing the codification, and logging into the codification. You'll recall from the previous class on SEC research that in 1933 and 1934, Congress issued laws giving the SEC authority to regulate stock markets and exchanges and things like that. So they had to determine what kind of accounting principles they would use, and in 1938 they decided that they would let somebody in the private sector make that decision. That authority went to the American Institute of Accountants. Today that group is known as AICPA, or American Institute of CPAs. You looked at them at our research exercise, and they created a committee on accounting procedure. The GAAP that this committee issued was known as an accounting research bulletin, and you can see in the outline that they were numbered 1 through 59. So they were around for about 21 years and issued a number of accounting pronouncements. In 1959, in order to satisfy some complaints and suggestions about the accounting standards process, the American Institute of CPAs changed the structure and created another group called the Accounting Principles Board, or APB. They issued GAAP using documents called opinions, and there were 31 opinions issued by the APB. They issued some other kinds of statements too. 30 of them were called interpretations, and 4 were called statements. So once again, another very active group. In 1973, the group that is currently issuing GAAP, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, took over. At that time, when they made a decision about GAAP, they called it a Statement of Financial Accounting Standard, right? Statement of Financial Accounting Standard, or the abbreviation was often just with the initials SFAS. And they issued 168 standards. On top of that, there were concept statements, interpretation, staff position, technical bulletins. So there's a lot of different GAAP that's out there. And depending upon who issued the GAAP, some had more authority than others. So besides the different types of GAAP, they were also ranked A through D. So by 2009, some of the ARBs were still active, some of the APBs were still active, and some of the SFASs were also active. There was a lot of places you would go to look for GAAP. So to simplify things and put GAAP all in one place, the FASB approved the codification as the single source for authoritative U.S. accounting and reporting standards. Now the SEC also issues some standards that just apply to public companies, so those would not be applicable to private industries. And also realize that there's another agency called the GASB that issues GAAP for government entities. So what we're talking about here would be a business that does manufacturing, a service industry, could be anything from a large international company down to a family-owned business. The codification is organized in a hierarchy, and it can be visualized as an outline. So we'll see an example of it in a second when I log in. The highest area, called area, has 9 different parts. General principles, presentation, right, all the way down to industry. When you select an area, you'll see that it's broken down into topics. So I opened up the area of assets, and it included accounting information about cash, accounting information about receivables, accounting information about investments, and so forth. Once you find the topic that you're interested in, you can further drill down into subtopics. And so in the area of property, plant, and equipment, I find that there are several, as you see on the screen, and my screenshot that's pasted in there actually includes quite a bit more. Once you know what section you're in, you can drill down into that, and that is where you find the guidance. So the key thing to remember about doing financial accounting research is you need to get all the way to the section that provides the guidance for what you're dealing with. So for example, this section here talks about some of the costs that are associated with putting an asset into operation. And we know that the general idea is it's not only the cost of the asset, it's also the cost of everything needed to get it ready for working. And if the company borrowed some money to purchase the asset, and during the time they were setting that asset up, because they borrowed money, they had to pay interest. The cost of the interest during the time period of setting up the asset is included in the cost of the asset. So that piece of GAAP, right, relates to 360, 10, 30, 1, right? We start with the very broad topic. We indicate the subtopic where it is found, and then the last 2 numbers indicate the section and paragraph where the specific guidance can be found. I'll stop the video now and create a second one that continues with the next page of the outline.